Okay, so welcome everybody. This is seminar session number 8, and it's another panel. It's a STEM faculty connections panel, and this space here today is really intentional for our students to just really get a perspective of faculty life at CSU, as well as get an understanding of how they can begin to foster those relationships with faculty members, and also get an understanding of what do faculty do throughout their time at CSU. We have 5 wonderful panelists, which I'm excited for them to be here today. But for panel engagement, it's just a few quick things. Feel free to unmute yourself if you're comfortable when it's time to take questions for our panelists. Please have a video on if you're comfortable and able to as well. Engage within the Zoom realm as comfortable as you are with the functions, such as raising your hand, reactions, and using the chat box. And the most important one, at least I think, is just making connections in the space because there isn't a lot of these spaces that are held throughout CSU. So it's a really genuine fostering space. So just make the most of it as you're comfortable with it. And for the flow for the panel today, we're going to start off with introductions from each panelist. They each have a slide that they're going to use to introduce themselves a little bit. Once they're done introducing themselves, they're going to each talk to the same 4 questions, one at a time. And once they're done talking through the questions, we'll open it up to take questions for that specific panelist who spoke. And then the next panelist will go talk to those 4 questions and then take questions for the panelists. We'll do that for each single panelist, and once they're all done, we'll open it up to questions for all of the panelists to take until we run out of questions or run out of time. So without further ado, I would like our first panelist, Dr. Bosker, to introduce themselves.
Hi everyone, I'm in civil and environmental engineering. I'm an assistant professor. I've been at CSU since 2016 and teach some undergraduate and graduate courses. And I think unless there was something else specific I was supposed to say, I'll wait to respond to your questions.
Awesome, thank you. And I'll invite our next panelist to introduce themselves.
Hi, as I said before, my name is Karen Dobis, and I, as you can see, got my PhD many years ago, probably before quite a few of you were born. Um, I've been at CSU since 2002 this time, and have really enjoyed having a very active lab and also being engaged in university administration. But what I enjoyed most actually is the connectedness that I get to have with faculty and students, just even in the check-in, hearing that Jeremy, I think I'm remembering your first name. I don't see you on my screen, so I'm sorry if I forgot it. Rugenstein. Again, sorry if I forgot your name, but talking about how you were trying to fix something in the lab, and Mustafa talking about how you finally got a paper written that it took you a year, and now you're going to get 3 done in 4 weeks. Good luck. And then also, hearing that, why we like snow, why we hate snow, that how much we enjoy the Colorado outdoors, and hearing the same from the students about the getting to go to the hot springs when it's freezing cold out, and reading a good book, that's not a textbook, right? And so I just absolutely love that, because I often don't feel as though I belong, um, you know, um, because I'm first gen, and because I'm an underrepresented minority, I often I feel like I'm faking it, or that I'm doing something that I is like unlearned. And so when I hear that that my experiences are more similar than different, even with faculty and with the students, I suddenly feel refreshed. Like, okay, I belong here and I can contribute. And also, it makes me forget that I graduated in 1996. When I get to interact with students, I sort of pretend that I actually still am in my late 20s, and I get that energy. So, just a few things about me and why I just really love it here at CSU, and also love the field that I'm in.
Thank you, Dr. Dobis. I invite our next panelists to introduce themselves.
Hi, Jeremy Rugenstein. I actually just started in August of last summer. My family and I moved from Germany to Fort Collins. A crazy time to start, but we all made it, and we've stayed healthy. I did my bachelor's in earth science in 2009, and then I went and did my PhD and finished in 2016. And then I went to Europe for several postdocs. And I just included on this slide some pictures of some places I've been. Most of my PhD work was in Central Asia. There are places that look a lot like Colorado, and then places that are starkly very different, but I find them all spectacular. And on the right-hand side is just really what I do every time I go outside for work, which is measuring rocks in the field and then collecting samples to bring back to the lab. So, and thanks to Nicolette for organizing this.
Thank you, Dr. Rugenstein. Next, I would like to invite our next panelist to introduce themselves.
Hi, I'm Mustafa Yurtkani. I'm an assistant professor in mechanical engineering. I've been at CSU since August 2018. I did my undergrad in mechanical engineering and at Sharif University in Iran. Then I went to Canada to do my graduate work, and I did my master's and PhD there. Then I did my postdoc at University of Illinois and came to Colorado. So I've been moving from east to west continuously, from Iran to Canada and to Illinois to here. So why I ended up here at CSU, it was because it's very similar to Iran actually in terms of weather, in terms of environment. So it reminds me of home. In my research, I have put some images of the work that we do. I work on polymers and composites. So in composites, you have seen bikes probably that are made of composite. They're lightweight and strong material. And you have recently probably heard about 3D printing. So we develop new materials for 3D printing. We make composites energy efficient. So instead of needing a lot of energy and time, we make things very fast without too much energy. I think that's pretty much it that I was going to cover here. Thanks.
Thank you. And now I invite our final panelists to introduce themselves.
Hi, I'm Ernie Chavez, he, him, and I hate to tell you how long I've been here. I've been here at CSU since 1976, and will graduate my 50th PhD next year. I don't really think of psychology as a STEM discipline, but I believe that we inform what happens in why we don't see more participation of students of color in STEM and what some of the issues are related to that. As Dr. Dobis was saying, imposter syndrome came out of psychology, and the fact is that it permeates what a lot of first generation people of color perceive related to whether they belong in a certain environment or not. I am the director of the Colorado Wyoming LSAMP Lewis Stokes Alliance for Minority Participation in STEM, which is a consortium group of 16 institutions across Colorado and Wyoming, focused on increasing the number of underrepresented students in STEM disciplines. So this year, for instance, this summer, we are sponsoring and covering salaries for 40 students of color to be involved in summer research programs throughout the state. And well, we don't have any, well, that's not true. We have some community college folks in Wyoming who are involved in research. Matter of fact, in some spatial research, they're going to be doing some work up in northern Wyoming. So we're involved in trying to increase the numbers as best we know and understand how to do that kind of work. So I think that's part of how I'm connected to this group of stellar scientists even though I've been here at CSU longer than some of them have been alive.
Thank you. And thank you, all of our panelists, for introducing yourselves. Now we're going to start back with our first panelist, Dr. Bosker, to answer these 4 bolded questions. I'll keep my screen shared for the additional questions that we receive, so it'll help with those that watch the recording. They can see as well as hear the questions that are asked. So I'll hand it over to you, to Dr. Bosker, to get us started.
Yeah, so I can't comment as much on what it is like being a faculty member at CSU versus somewhere else, because this is my only faculty member location, but it is rewarding to be able to work with undergraduate students and graduate students and see them progress and learn new things and move on to the next thing. There are also challenges being a new faculty member with kind of teaching courses for the first time. The experience for me is kind of every time I'm kind of relearning the material right before I teach it. And especially the first time, it's sort of like I do research in a really specific, really narrow area, and then I'm teaching something much more broad. So being able to answer questions about this broad topic, and that's a challenge, but it's also something fun about, I get to learn about other areas besides my really narrow research area. It's how am I connected and involved on campus? So I do research on urban hydrology focused in the Denver region, look at how water movement changes with urban development. I'm involved with the American Society of Civil Engineers Environmental Water Resources Institute chapter at CSU. I'm also involved with the Colorado Water Center's Water Fellows Program, which is a fellowship program for students of color interested in water careers, and developing a mentoring program for students of color interested in connecting with peer mentoring and also people who are more established in water careers. And yeah, for me, getting connected with me would be normal times, would be coming to my office hours in person and talking to me then. Right now it's Zoom office hours. And good ways to get involved with research on campus would be, the ideal way would be to identify a faculty member whose research you're interested in and contact them. And if you're not sure what area you're interested in or who, if they have availability, you can also, I think each department will have their undergraduate advisors who could also serve as resources, kind of coordinators for who might have research availability. But that's, I should have mentioned that as one of the experiences of being a faculty member is especially in the summer, it's rewarding to be able to work with undergraduates on field work and computer-based research and really get to know them in a different way than in the classroom. And yeah, I think I'll pass it along to the next person then.
Before we do that, we're going to take some questions for you.
Okay.
Yeah. So if anybody has any questions for Dr. Bosker, feel free to unmute yourself if you're comfortable, or put it in the chat box and I can read it off for you.
And I'll just comment kind of in response to what Karen was sharing earlier, that about imposter syndrome. So I'm in the department where I'm not in the dominant group in terms of gender or race. And so I see this is something, a message that I need to reinforce for myself, that I have contributions that are valuable, even if that's not a message that I'm getting externally all the time, and not something I see, to be able to have that self-affirmation that's I can make valuable contributions in terms of research and education, that my work is important, and that this is something that I needed to learn to be able to give that message to myself, because being in environments where that message isn't automatically given to me means that I don't want to be completely crushed by that, and so to reinforce it for myself. So, and yeah, I see this comment in the chat from Alex. So, how did I get involved in my specific research? Yeah, so I was interested in, kind of from high school, seeing physics as a topic that I was interested in working on, but I didn't see how it fit in with anything societally relevant in high school. And then I actually read an article about groundwater and saw that there's something that an application of physics, something that's STEM related, that I could actually work on that would be useful to society. So I was really looking at how can my work be useful, and identify groundwater as a direction for that. And more broadly, later in my graduate work, I learned more about hydrology, the study of water resources, and the science of studying water resources and water movement. And so I got involved with that through that process. And actually in my undergraduate time, a useful experience for me was doing undergraduate research through a research experience for undergraduates program in the summer, and being able to get a little bit more hands-on than in my classes. And so work with a faculty member and learn a little bit about what it means to be doing research, and seeing that I enjoyed it, I felt like it fit with my, it fit with maybe my personality in terms of some time that I could be focusing on, computer work, and then some time I could be engaging with other people. So I got a little taste of research in that undergraduate research program, and then decided I wanted to keep doing it.
I have a question before we move on to our next panelist. When you're speaking through these questions, I noticed that you are taking on a lot of additional commitments in conjunction with being a faculty and teaching classes. Do you have any insight or advice or guidance for our students that want to focus on academics while balancing other commitments?
Yeah, I guess I was mentioning the two organizations that I'm connected with on campus. That the first one is mainly for graduate students, and the second one I mentioned, the Waterfalls program, is for undergraduate students. And so those are both things that I am hoping people will be able to participate in addition to students who are interested, in addition to their academic work, because I think that it may be, I don't know that either of them will be particularly time consuming for students, but the connection with peers in terms of that support, and also if you're interested in learning about future career paths, what you might want to do after CSU, it's really important to keep talking to people and learning as much as you can, like you are right now. So you're already doing that kind of process to be successful at CSU, and get resources from people who also know that you can be successful, and so how learning more about how you can get support. So I think not isolating yourself and not struggling by yourself is really important in whatever you're trying to do. So, and I know it can be also maybe a balancing act to focus on that in addition to your other work. So working on your problem sets and your lab reports and everything. So for me, I see this as part of being a faculty member, is doing research, teaching courses, but also contributing to broader educational opportunities for students and the community at CSU. So I don't see it as a necessarily an additional thing I'm taking on. It's really part of my job as a faculty member, as I see it.
Thank you. Is there any other questions for Dr. Bosker before we move on to Dr. Dobis? Okay, I'll hand it over to you, Dr. Dobis, to talk through these 4 bolded questions.
Sure, of course. I want to pronounce your name correctly, Dr. Bosker. Like Dr. Bosker, I've only been a faculty member at CSU. I have collaborated with other faculty at many other universities, so I feel confident to say that a lot of the struggles that I experience as a faculty member are similar to what my colleagues are experiencing. And so I think that's important because it's probably also the same for a lot of undergraduate and graduate education experiences, to have an awareness of where the culture is, across the nation, and then where it's specifically good or specifically toxic in your environment. And so getting that sort of bell curve data is important, because then there's things that you can focus on enjoying or thriving, um, or saying like, this is a level of this is not acceptable, and I know that this is not part of the norm, so I'm going to do something about it, or make a decision that's healthy, for my person. But I have only been a faculty member at CSU. I really like being connected in a lot of ways, and I will say that often it's a fault. I put in my little intro slide that I'd like to try new things. So that includes trying different committees or trying different ways of advising students or getting engaged, doing different types of research even. And I enjoy that diverse experience, and at the same time it can compromise my ability to really focus on something well. And so I just have to put that as a caveat, that if you are also enjoy trying new things and exploring different avenues, to check in with yourself and say, okay, is this now owning me, or do I still own it? Am I still in control of experiencing this new thing, or is it taking over my life? And is it time for me to reassess and establish some healthy boundaries? And to kind of create a philosophy, if you will, about why, what's in it for what's my philosophy, so that I can make sure that I'm always engaging back with that. But I have gotten involved in a lot of things, and that includes a lot of bioethics committees, biosafety laboratory advisory committees, various different mentoring engagements, and um, so I've enjoyed all of them, and I have learned, you know, if I'm able to provide value and I'm getting something in return, then I'm willing to engage in it long term. But if it's sort of just an action project with a focused goal, that's also nice. And if it seems to be that it's that culture where there's not a lot of productivity and there's a lot of wheel spinning and there's a lot of frustration, then for me, I just say, well, I'm not equipped to contribute, because we're spinning our wheels. So to me, that's like every mind in this room is not the right mind to be solution focused, and that includes my own. So I'm going to back out. And so how to get connected and start building a relationship. Boy, again, like Dr. Bosker was saying, normally you could just meet with a faculty member one-on-one, and these are such challenging times to get started. you know, you can look at your home department or home college's web page for faculty, and search interests that you're, you know, where areas where you're really interested. And I would say that it's also important to know what the faculty appointment is. And what that means is that some faculty have a high research appointment and a smaller teaching and service appointment, and vice versa, and then equal everything in between. And so if you are really excited about working with a faculty that has a high teaching environment, a high teaching load, then it might be more beneficial for you to contact them during the breaks and maybe form that relationship working with them over the summer when they're going to be excited and able to provide you with the time and the energy that you deserve. Whereas if you have a faculty member with a high research commitment, they might actually take those breaks to get recentered and focused a little. And therefore, it's better for you to engage with them at the beginning of a semester when they're gearing up on their projects, or they've just, you know, finished writing a grant or writing papers over the summer, and they're you know, ready to get back in and get back engaged. So I think that's something that's very important, something that I totally did not know as a student, and I actually didn't even understand it as a faculty member what those commitments meant. So so I but that might be very valuable to learn. And you know, one, how to do that though is I don't know how transparent departments are about whether faculty have high research or high teaching commitments. I can say that if the faculty member you're interested in has a couple of classes every semester, then that's an indicator right there that they have a high teaching commitment. And to reach out to them during the breaks and see if there's a summer opportunity when they can provide time and commitment for you. um, and and why that's important is they might keep you on for years, but their ability to train and mentor and focus and get you going so that you're successful is going to be off of those semesters. And then, you know, usually once that investment is made, then of course faculty always want to retain skilled students at any level. And so it's just finding that the right time to get going, and being a little resilient and understanding of the fact that we have, since we're at an R1 university, we have a mixture of faculty with different research and teaching expectations that are on them. Let's see. So I think I just answered bullet 3 and 4 together. And did I miss anything? I think I'm good on the base questions. So unless I miss something, I'm happy to redirect myself and get an answer that provides you the information that you need. Oh, thank you. Yes, I'm using jargon. Thank you, Dr. Bosker, defining the kind of university CSU is. So we're a high tier research in university.
It looks like we have a question from Alex. Also, thank you for talking through those questions. Let's see, we have, how do your appointments usually look? And that's from Alex.
My appointments for students, or what is my current appointment type? Sorry for being confused.
The last one, I'm pretty sure I meant.
Okay. Yes. So right now I am an odd bird because I actually have a high service commitment, and that's as the director of research integrity and compliance for the university, which manages how to be a responsible researcher, how to perform research with human subjects ethically, research with animals ethically, and research with pathogens safely. And so that's a very high service commitment. I'm coming off of that commitment at the end of the summer. So the rest of my focus is on research. So my appointment's kind of weird. Normally I would say I was a high research faculty member, but right now I have a very high service commitment. And so so it probably looks very similar to a faculty member with a high teaching commitment, if that makes sense. I'm going to be, unfortunately, I'm very my time is very committed to those service functions. And at the same time, I still always am looking forward to mentoring students. That's why I went to a university as opposed to being in biotech or working for the federal government, was for the opportunity to be engaged with students. So I'm just honest, I'm just a little hard to get a hold of right now. So, but always happy to chat if that helps.
And I had a question while we're waiting for other folks to think of some questions. I'm interested, is there other types of commitments outside of teaching, service, and research? Any other ones that faculty would kind of traditionally take on?
I think the big black box is what is service, because I think it's understandable to say what teaching is. It's understandable to say what research is, and to measure those things. And then service is this really open-ended thing that people get a percent of, but they don't really understand what it is. And that really encompasses everything. So service can be participating on committees, like even the stuff that Dr. Bosker was talking about. She's contributing to something that hopefully will also benefit her research program, but maybe not. Maybe it'll benefit the research program in that discipline more so than it ever benefits her. And so that makes it a service function. Um, if you're in the College of Veterinary Medicine and Biomedical Sciences, and you're also a veterinarian and you have service hours at the veterinary teaching hospital, you are definitely performing a service for those animal clients, for which you get the value of staying contemporary and practicing, but really your value is that what you're giving of your expertise to the veterinary field. So that's another form of service, and you can see how they're very different. One is sort of in front of your computer or talking or being part of meetings, and the other one is very technical with your hands, but they're both service functions. Mostafa talked about writing a paper. Oftentimes we also review papers, and that's voluntary. And it takes a lot of time and hours, and you're reading it and you're writing down how to improve it. You're giving points to the authors as to how to make sure that their paper is sound and publishable. And the benefit is mostly for those other authors. It benefits your field because the bigger our database is for the body of knowledge that we work in, the better that benefits all of us. But really the number one benefit is to those authors, because you're allowing them to have a publication record, by giving them a good critique. So those are very different spaces, and they all kind of fit under service. I did like that you added on about the extension appointment, where you could be working at the spur. Oh gosh, I don't know what SPUR stands for, but what it does is part of the National Western Complex, and it provides a lot of outreach in the agricultural field. And again, you're helping people in the community that are working. This is their livelihood, and you're offering them your knowledge and your advice, and helping them manage their careers. Extension plays a big role in agriculture here at the university. There's a research station in the San Luis Valley, and that really helps the farming industry down there, especially dealing with blight and drought and pathogens, and your benefit is that you're helping them maintain their livelihood by virtue of your ability to stay contemporary in the knowledge, in scientific knowledge, working in diversity and inclusion environments, working on faculty governance. Those are all huge service commitments for which you're benefiting. The goal is to benefit the every member of the university, and by doing so, you indirectly benefit yourself, because if we have a better university, it's something that you can be more proud of, and that you feel responsible to. So that was a big open-ended question. I hope I hope I gave a good flavor.
Yes, thank you so much for taking the time to go in depth. Okay, so we're going to transition to our next panelist just to make sure we have enough time for everybody to go. So I invite Dr. Rugenstein to go next when you're ready.
Hello, I'm Jeremy Rugenstein. Yeah, just like the previous two speakers, I've actually only ever been a faculty member at CSU, so it's hard to compare. I'll answer this in two ways. I'm in the geosciences department, and one of the things I really enjoy about being a faculty member at CSU is that you don't have to travel far to see interesting rocks and interesting parts of the Earth system. I mean, we have the plains to the east, which are this fascinating ecosystem critical zone that is soils and sort of deep zones in the soils, mixture with the geology. And then, of course, to our west, we have the Rocky Mountains, where you have these incredible climatic gradients as you go from, Fort Collins, relatively warm and dry, up into the more glaciated parts of the Rockies. So it's very easy here as a faculty member, especially during COVID, when it's difficult to travel to do interesting work just in the area around us. The other way I'll answer this question is I spent about 4 years in Europe as a postdoctoral researcher. So doing research after my PhD. And one thing I really like about the American system of academics, and maybe this is only true in the geosciences, is that there's a lot more leeway as a student, particularly as a master's student or a PhD student, to start a project and then realize it's not going to work and still be able to do really cool work. And there's a lot of reasons for that. PhDs here tend to last a little longer than Europe. Funding is sometimes a little bit more flexible than in Europe. And so this is something I think we do really well. And I think that's true at CSU as well, in comparison with my colleagues in Europe, where to be a student there is to be under a lot of pressure to make sure you finish in 3 or 4 years. And if you don't, you often are sort of forced onto unemployment in order to finish up your doctorate. And I think this is a big advantage in general at America, but it also applies here at CSU. How am I connected and involved on campus? I mean, in the geosciences department, most of us have research elsewhere in the world, but nearly everyone in our department does research just in the area. There's a lot of faculty members that work at the Mountain campus, which is about an hour and a half outside, 2 hours off outside campus. Lots of other people do research in the Rockies or in the Plains. And so it's nice to be able, that's an easy way to work with my colleagues, because we can all easily go out to the field or easily work on questions here. And one way I've been involved. My research is actually mostly using the so-called light stable isotopes. So this is looking at the isotopes of hydrogen or carbon or oxygen. And most of my laboratory equipment is going into a core facility that's actually in the natural resource ecology lab. So it's been fun to meet people in an entirely different department than I'm in. And another way that I'm trying to get involved on campus. And then finally, I serve on the department's diversity and inclusion committee. And we're trying as a committee to especially develop a better relationship with Navajo Tech and Crown Point as a way of bringing more tribal students into geoscience research. And so one of the things I'm trying to do in my first year here. How can students get connected and start building a relationship? I think the two previous speakers gave some really good tips. And one thing I would add is I think if you're interested, especially in the geosciences, if you're interested in someone's research and you can't meet them in person, feel free to send them an email. And if you don't get a response, one thing I would stress is don't worry. It probably means nothing at all, actually, just that email got lost in the inbox. And so definitely send it again, and don't feel bad about having to send a few emails to get someone's attention. Everyone is pretty busy, and I think that's been exacerbated by the pandemic. So, everyone here really wants to help you succeed as a student. And so if you have to resend the email and just say, hey, maybe you missed this, really don't feel bad about doing that. The other thing I'd add is if you have ideas for what you want to get out of your research, include that as well. What are what's your long-term goals? Do you want to go into a graduate degree, or are you looking to get some research experience to just know if this is kind of your thing? Or do you want some research experience because actually you want to do something else, but you want to understand how research applies? And I think that as a faculty member, if you say that up front, it helps us to sort of design a research project that can help you meet your goals as well for your time here at CSU. One other thing I'll add in geoscience is it's been hard, of course, during the pandemic, but we've succeeded, I think, reasonably well, is we try and hold regular events with the faculty, virtual events between the faculty and the undergrads. And these are typically either hosted by our academic success coordinator, or there are several undergraduate clubs that have been hosting events where they have one or two faculty speakers come and talk about their time at CSU or just about their research. They've also been including graduate students. And I think attending those is a really helpful way, outside of classes, to build a connection. So I think I'd answered all those questions, but happy to answer more. What sort of benefits do postdoctoral positions experiences have? That's a great question. So I think there's a few ways to answer this. I think the most direct way is that when you do a PhD and you spend 5 years, say, working with a single advisor, maybe two advisors, you start to really think like that person. And doing a postdoc experience somewhere else, and especially I think in another country, you're just exposed to different ways of thinking about science, both in a scientific sense, like how different ways to think about how, for me, in my case, how different parts of the Earth system work. But you also learn different ways of just doing science, different ways of mentoring students, different ways that universities are organized. And you can try and take some of those good ideas and bring them back to wherever you end up. The second thing I'll answer is that a postdoc experience, you really are completely free to work on what you want. You typically, it's not always the case, but you typically don't have any teaching requirements, and you don't need to take any classes. So your entire time is spent working on research, which is a lot of fun. So the next question, how can students start looking into research or graduate programs in other countries? I don't know. I don't know if this is true for all fields, but in the geosciences, in the geosciences outside of the US, you typically need to do a master's first. So you can either do your master's here in the US, or in Europe, typically you would be enrolling as a sort of almost a type of undergraduate student to do a master's before you can start a doctoral program, particularly in Europe. Now, how to actually find programs, I think the two best ways would be, one, to sign up to the listservs or sort of job boards in your area of study or what you're interested in. Many programs, especially in Europe, tend to post PhD positions on these job boards or on listservs. And I think actually perhaps the first way I would go about it is ask some faculty members at CSU where they would start looking. Many of us have, if we don't have direct collaborators outside the country, we at least know of people outside the country working in various fields, and we can sort of point you in those directions. And once you start researching, you'll build more and more connections to other graduate programs. But I would say first and foremost, ask at CSU what would be a good place to start in your field of research. See, Richard, do you have a question?
Yeah, I have. So it's not really related to, well, it kind of is, but so, and this is like an open-ended question, so also other faculty can answer, but I don't know if you had any experiences with working a part-time like research job or like a part-time job while also like um with your academics. So like how would you like, do you have any experience with like balancing all that and like managing your time? So with work or with research or with work, research and academics?
Yeah, I don't. I'll definitely let other people answer that. I don't have a whole lot of experience working, say, outside jobs besides my research position. One thing I like about doing a graduate degree in a STEM field is typically you receive a stipend to do that work, so that you can concentrate on doing your research and you don't have to work outside of your graduate degree. In general, though, it's always tough to balance, doing your research with sort of outside interests, even, or outside work. And one thing I think is really helpful is, and this varies I think by everyone, is to try and establish what are your time limits. What are you willing to say? I've done enough for the day. This is all I can think about. The rest just has to get done the next time I work, whether it's tomorrow or the following day, and trying to stick by those limits. And it may, in the short term, feel a little frustrating. You're kind of limiting yourself, but I think in the long term, you'll stay a little bit sort of mentally healthier. But I'll let other faculty as well answer that question if they have other experiences or a piece of advice.
Can I jump in on that one? I think that this is exactly one of the difficulties that first gen and students of color have in terms of being involved in research. CSU is looking at a variety of things. For instance, one of the things they just developed, internships are another thing that are difficult for students who are working to also work into their schedules. So CSU just developed this, I don't know where they got the money, but that they would fund students to do their internship, and they'll give you the money. They'll give you up to $4,800 over the semester to do the internship. So it is a problem. It's a problem when you're having to work. I worked as an undergraduate 30 hours a week every semester except one. And it's really difficult to do anything but sleep, study, and work. Thinking about how to get research involved in all that too gets really difficult. But there are some things, and one of the things we're doing is the funding we're doing with summer is REU funding, but we're focusing on students of color, and it's a big stipend plus a housing allowance so that you can actually get involved in research and stay local and do that same kind of thing. So there's some of those programs available for you. And yeah, thank you for that. It's at the Career Center, the internship thing. Thanks.
Thank
I would also say, to jump in, that I completely agree with what Ernie was saying, that this is one of the things that leads to losing first gen and underrepresented minorities in the STEM, is that they need to work to stay in school, and then they need to focus on their academics to stay in school, and then there's not much left that allows them to elevate to that graduate level or to the professional degree or successful job after their degree. And I there's also opportunities for additional work study, which gives you an edge, because now you are a more attractive candidate to a faculty member, because they're only going to pay a quarter of your hourly wage as opposed to all of your hourly wage, and that might give you an opportunity to earn money while doing research. And I would also challenge faculty to making opportunities available, to be quite honest. If we're committed to diversion, equity, and diversity, equity, and inclusion, then that means that faculty have to understand that some students must have an income, and they need to not cultivate a culture where that's used to weed out a student. So, previously, if you had to work, you were weeded out because you weren't as attractive as a student who didn't need to work. And that's racism, that's discrimination. And so I think that it requires of the student to say, hey, I have this job, I need this job, I need to earn a living in order to stay in school, and I would love an opportunity with your lab or in your environment, and I'm willing to work towards that, but I'm being transparent about the fact that I'm going to need to work. And then get at again, cultivating that culture in faculty where that's not used as an opportunity for a faculty member to say, well, no thank you to you, I'm going to look at this person that can give over everything to me for free. To actually say thank you, for being transparent, and you're highly qualified and you're really motivated, so let's see what we can do, because it is incredibly challenging.
Thank you.
I just wrote something else, I'll just read it. I also appreciate when students tell me there are limits. They need to work a certain number of hours of hourly paid research work over the summer, or you'll need to get an additional job. And so that will let me know your availability, that you're really available if I am able to provide full-time work, or you're going to be much more limited if I'm only able to plan for part-time. And so that helps me plan for people's schedules to prioritize if they are trying to avoid getting another job, how to fill in enough work for them.
Thank you.
And I want to add that, first of all, like I had a class of a student of like 100 students, and I asked them, they were all juniors or seniors. I asked them who wants to go to graduate schools. None raised their hand, and they said because of the tuition and the cost. So it seems this is a misunderstanding that none of our students know that going to graduate school, if it's a research active master's or a PhD program, a stipend and tuition is paid by the program. If you do a course-based master's, that's a different story. But that's what I found. And then I talk every course that I teach, I talk to the class that this is how it works, and these are my students that are working in my lab. So that has helped the students to decide to go to graduate school. Also, in terms of opportunities for working in research lab and in terms of financial management, a lot of us have fundings for undergraduate researchers. So it's always good to discuss that with the faculty. If you are interested in doing research and increasing your insight and knowledge in the field, instead of working for something random that just to pay for your expenses and for your living cost, there might be opportunities that it will actually just reduce that work outside CSU and spending more time on your program. And this is true for like summer work or also during the semester. It doesn't have to be work study. I have, for example, funding just paying hourly to my students over the summer, which where work study doesn't apply, but that helps the students just to get some research experience over the summer.
Thank you.
Thank you all for contributing to answering these questions. It's awesome to hear the knowledge that you're just sharing to our students, and I'm learning a lot too. So I would like to invite Dr. Yortgani to talk through these 4 bolded questions.
Sure. I have been at CSU for 2.5 years, and since the first year, I have been working on establishing a lab. So my work is purely experimental. buying stuff, thinking about like how to save money for everything, and then at the same time hiring a student. So I've been busy with establishing the building a lab, and at the same time hiring students. So and also developing new courses, as was this mentioned earlier. So it's been a busy time for me over the past 2.5 years, and that's one of the reasons that I couldn't write that paper yet until last week. But I have loved the experience so far, especially because of the environment that we have at the CSU is very friendly and collaborative compared to other places that I've seen as students and postdoc. Also, the fact that we are at Fort Collins, it's that you can have a good lifestyle, which is not achievable other places. So that helps to have more motivation to work, because you know that you can enjoy your summer and winter time at the same time. I mean, there are things to do. In terms of how I get connected and involved on campus, I'm a research active faculty. I mostly focus on developing new ideas for research and working with the students. I learn a lot from my students, and if you look at it, like how I've hired the students, I have freshman students and senior PhD students right now in my group. So from each of them I learn, and that's one of the beauty of our job, that is continuous learning, not from our peers, but from our students too. I'm also involved in terms of committees, I'm involved in a new program that we are developing in our department, is on developing an aerospace engineering program. So I'm an aerospace engineering committee. And in terms of advising, I try to get involved with different ways that I can recruit students to my group, not from mechanical engineering per se, outside, because my work is interdisciplinary, and having students from freshmen, like sophomore and so forth. So that's how that's my approach to research, that we have to have a diverse set of students in my group, not only in terms of their background, but also in terms of like their disciplines that they're coming from. How can students get connected and start building a relationship? So yeah, if I've had the students knock on my door and come talk to me about my research. If I have time, if I'm not teaching, I would sit them with half an hour, like randomly, and just talk about my research. That shows me that they are interested in learning about my research. So that's an interesting way of approaching faculty, but that means that you should already know what you want to do, understand what your interests are, what you want to do with your career, and then identify the faculty. And nowadays, every faculty have a website that you can search. You can see what they are working on. If you want to learn more, then you can talk to them. These days, people send me emails, but there are two types of emails. One is there's a random email that you send to everyone. Nobody reads those emails. If it's a specific, then you get the attention. So try to show that really you care about whatever that person is doing, and show interest. And believe me, it's going to work 100%. How to get involved with research on campus. So a lot of undergrads that work in my lab, they come out of the courses that they take with me. So in my courses, I talk about my research, and then they come and volunteer for research. But look for opportunities. I post opportunities myself, like for research assistants, paid or unpaid. So there are different ways that you can find research positions, but I'm saying it again, just contact the faculty that you are interested. And then if that person finds you interested in their research, they're gonna give you a position. At least I will do. I think I touched on all of the questions. Yeah, I think so.
Yes, thank you. And now we'll take some questions for Dr. Yurkani. Feel free to unmute yourself and ask questions, or put it in the chat box, and I'll read it off for you. Okay, we have one from Alex, and it says, when did you know you wanted to be a faculty member at the university level?
Very good question. I remember in third year of my undergrad, I saw a PhD student and I said, man, I don't want to do a PhD. And here I am. So it's just, I don't know when I became interested to become a faculty, but it was through my master's that I became more interested in research. I did my PhD, postdoc, and then became a faculty. It was towards the end of my PhD that I realized that a lot of my friends who more senior friends who got a job, they are doing things that are kind of not innovative and it's just limited in terms of creativity. And I didn't like that type of job. And I decided to stay in the research field. And the way to go is either to become a faculty or go to find a job that is R&D, research and development. So I chose the faculty path because it also involves teaching. And for me, teaching is always very interesting and I keep learning from by teaching myself. So, but I never thought from when I was doing my undergrad that I would do a PhD, that's for sure.
Thank you for answering that question. Any other questions from folks? Okay, I'm going to keep it moving just to make sure we have enough time for Dr. Chavez. But if you think of a question for Dr. Yerkany, feel free to put it in the chat. But I'd like to hand it over now to Dr. Chavez to talk through these 4 bolded questions.
It's been fascinating listening to all of you talk about your experiences. I mean, I find what I tell people is that being a faculty member is the closest thing to being self-employed and getting a regular salary that you can find. Because the biggest thing you have as a faculty member is time. You get to choose how you're spending your time. Whether it's service, I mean, you better be tenured and promoted, but whether it's service, whether it's research, whether it's teaching, I've done 5 different jobs in my job at CSU. I've been a teacher, I've been a researcher, I've written $20-some million in grants. I was department chair, I was head of the STEM center, you can do so many different things, and then you can get involved in all these different departmental things, not to mention the fact that you have this impact on people through teaching that you never thought you could have. I got an email last week from a student I taught when they were a freshman, and it's a first generation student that I was teaching. I teach in the key academic communities as well. And I didn't remember him. He came to talk to me and he said, I don't think I can afford to go to graduate school. I don't think I got the right stuff to do that, and it's too expensive. I told him what Mustafa was saying. I said, first of all, if you go to a PhD program, they're going to pay you to go. They'll cover your tuition. You can do that. You can make that happen. And you have the skills and abilities. So why don't you give it a try? Well, he wrote me an email at that was in 2007. He has his PhD. He finished the postdoc. He did his internship. And he's working in a job so NIH is taking care of half of his loans. So he's making more than his regular salary, actually, because he's getting his loans paid off at the same time. So these financial issues aren't it has more to do, I think, with seeing people like you getting in these kinds of jobs and positions. I didn't want to be a teacher. I had no idea I wanted to teach until somebody on my internship said, why don't you think about doing that instead of what you're thinking about doing? And I said, why? And then they told me. And so it's a fascinating job. I mean, with a lot of impact on people in an ongoing way. how am I involved on campus? I've done all kinds of things on campus. So the big problem on campus for faculty of color and women is being overextended in service. You're asked to be on all these committees. Oh, hey, I mean, for a long time, I was the only Latinx full professor on campus. It's always uncomfortable when they had me fill out the little questionnaires and then they ask you if you're a full professor, and everybody always knew who I was. I was never anonymous on those questionnaires. So, you want somebody, you need a person of color in this, doing this committee. Oh, I've been on 2 provost committees, 4 dean search committees, faculty search committees all over campus. So you can do tons of that kind of work and be involved in. I got yelled at El Centro when we were trying to change the name. They called me a Hispanic because we were changing it from El Centro Chicano to El Centro, and they didn't like it. So you can get yelled at in all kinds of different ways as a faculty member. How can students get involved in research? The first thing is it's your responsibility first to make the contact, to be willing to talk to faculty. They're just people. They seem like snobs, but they're really not all the time. They're just people. Talk to them. Find out about them. Go to their office hours. One of the things that's happening with Zoom office hours right now is nobody's showing up. And so you got faculty members sitting there waiting for people to come and talk to them. Come and talk to them. And beyond what Mustafa was saying, if you're really interested in the research at first, go to the website, see what kind of research people are doing. In psychology, we post research active faculty related to wanting students in their labs all the time in terms of sign up, we want this, do this, come in here, do the other thing. We're a huge major, 1,500 people, 1,500 majors thereabouts. And so, we have to work hard with our students to get them involved in research. But it falls on you as students to take the first step of making some of those connections. And then beyond finding out that, if you're really interested in the research, read one of their papers. So when you go and talk to them, you know what that focus is and what it's about. Dr. Bakiar said something really important for a lot of students of color in STEM. One of the reasons they leave is they don't see a connection with making a difference in society. They don't see how the STEM major helps them do that. When what's interesting to me is that the biggest way our world is changing is through STEM in dramatic, effective, powerful ways. So being involved in that and being, looking at how to change the world in the way STEM is changing. And I think also go to TILT. TILT has undergraduate research involvement center that will help you get connected to faculty and research programs. They even have some funds sometimes in terms of being able to help you do it. Going back to what Richard was asking, there are a lot of NIH grants, less so NSF, but NIH grants. You can write supplements that will allow you to write in more undergraduate and other folks of color to get them involved in the research. NSF's a little tougher with that. They do it differently, so it doesn't quite work the same way. But so if you're really focused and want to do this kind of stuff, there's ways to fund it where you can be involved. I think I covered all of them quickly though, because I think we're almost out of time.
Thank you. I had a quick question while students are thinking of their questions. Oh, Dr. Bosker,
Yeah, right.
got
I'm
it.
sorry.
I was about
National
to ask
Institute of
that.
Health. Yeah, and within the National Institute of Health, there are tons of different institutes. So it depends on what area you're interested in and how you want to do that. So National General Medical, for instance, funds a thing called Bridges to the Baccalaureate, which is a program we brought here and we funded and we got funded, which brought community college students into research programs in the summertime from Front Range. So, and then National Science Foundation, they're the two big federal funding sources related to research.
And we had
So-
another question from Alex, and it's what is it like becoming semi-retired?
I don't know yet. I'm a little bit afraid that it's going to be a lot like working because I'm half-time, and if I used to tell faculty this when I was a department chair, if you have 2 half-time appointments, you're going to work triple time because both places think that you should be full-time. And so I'm not sure that I'm actually going to get away with being semi-retired, but I'm going to try. So the idea will be I'll take Mondays and Fridays off and not answer email and not come in and not do stuff. So all my teaching will be Tuesdays and Thursdays. We'll see. So I don't know yet. I had a student ask me today, what are you going to do? I said, I don't know. Write a book.
I also had a quick question. So regarding I know you talked a little bit about this in your introduction, but I actually got an email from the Colorado Wyoming Alliance Minority Program. And so can you talk a little bit more about that? So like, what does being a student in that program help you?
Well, you should go to our website, which we spend a lot of money on to kind of upgrade and develop. And we try to make it more helpful for students in particular. So there's a link that we've worked with all of our partners, and we're trying to create a menu of things you can look for. I'm interested in scholarships for women interested in X, or I'm looking for programs. And so you might want to look that up. So it's funded by National Science Foundation. We're coming up for renewal right now. We've been funded for 25 years. And we're coming up for our 5-year renewal. We'll see if we still exist after, well, we should hear the end of April. And our job is to try to work. So all of these institutions, I mean, when's the last time you saw CU and CSU and Mines all sit down together and work together on something, as opposed to fight with each other about who has the best aeronautical engineering program in the world, or the best whatever engineering program. Well, we have our folks get together and they share the best things that they're doing to increase the underrepresented folks in STEM from all of these different groups. And so, for instance, we're coming together in May and we're going to talk about best practices and what's worked for increasing those numbers and how do we transplant that into other institutions. We meet once a month. We give money to these institutions. They then fund students to, like this year, we help students buy a whole bunch of tablets and other kinds of things because of all this online stuff that you've had to do. And then if you're a member or you're involved in COAM, then you can apply for these research positions, which are good paying positions in the summertime for 10 weeks of getting involved in research. We've also placed students in international programs. We work with NREL, National Region, the Resource Energy Lab in Golden, and we've placed students there in summer research. We've worked with the Louisiana State University at placing people overseas to do research and helped pay for that process. We worked with Engineers Without Borders to expand taking students from beyond engineering into so Engineers Without Borders go in and work or used to before COVID, would work in communities and develop different kinds of help with different kind of engineering needs. For example, a village in Guatemala that needs better water resources, right? And so they go in, they work in the summer, they create a water treatment plant and do some of these other things. Well, we've also been talking to some of the humanitarian engineering folks who've been telling us, but what about, how does that change the culture in that environment? What kinds of, when you make that kind of impact, what do you do that changes the world around that change? Artisanal miners in Peru is a good example of how things change. They use arsenic to clean the gold because it's cheap and easy, and because US dumps it on them down there very cheaply, but it gets into the soil and gets into the water and it kills people. So working with them to find something better to clean the gold with, that's more ecologically sound, but cheap, because these are small miners making small amounts of money getting gold. So those are the kinds of things that we do. Mostly it's entirely focused on undergraduate students and keeping them in STEM, recruiting them to STEM and getting them graduated.
Thank you.
You're welcome.
Any last questions that folks have for our panelists? We are at time, but I want to make sure if there's any other questions that it's put into the space to be answered. I see some thank yous coming into chat. So please thank our panelists with how you're able to, either in the chat box or reactions. Thank you all so much for being here to just share space with our students and to impart your knowledge and guidance on them. It honestly refreshed me, re-energized me for the week. So thank you so much for being here and serving on the panel. The only thing I have left to do is go through reminders, but panelists feel free to depart if you need to, but I'll be going through these reminders fairly quickly so everybody can enjoy the rest of your evening. So for this week, what we have due is a post discussion board on Friday, usual time at 11:59 p.m. So that's due. There's drop-in hours. This is the last time that drop-in hours will be happening with peer mentors. So definitely leverage that if you haven't done so already. For next week, the joint closing with the other seminar is unfortunately canceled because we just want to be mindful of y'all's capacity. And we're just trying to cut things out that we can if possible. So the joint closing is canceled, and that was supposed to be on Monday at 5 p.m. Next week will be family groups. Y'all will be doing the Padlet number 3 for the vision board activity. This is your final Padlet for this semester-long activity, and you'll be focusing on reflecting on short-term and long-term goals, as well as identifying some what's next goals, so looking at post-graduation goals. And that you'll be doing that in family groups. The last thing for reminders is don't forget about the vision board activity. I know it hasn't been talked a lot about this semester, but those instructions are on Canvas. Here's a snippet of where you can find it, and it'll be in this folder at the very bottom. I'll be making a video this week to recap and walk through what this activity is, so you can feel prepared and confident with your collage that you'll be sharing during our closing experience amongst everybody. The last thing is the post survey that'll be opened up after the closing experience on May 6th, and that'll be open up until the following Friday on May 14th. And that'll be the final thing that you'll have to complete, and that just helps us get some feedback of your experience with the seminar so we can improve it for other students that'll be going through this experience. And then the last thing is some events that are coming up. So there's the STEM research series that's continuing to happen for the AAC. There's an event happening tomorrow for that, Introduction to Research Article Searching from 3:30 to 5. And there's the STEM Researcher Series Showcase, and that'll be where faculty come in and talk a little bit about the research that they're doing with all of you. And then there's De-Stress Week. There's still information being solidified for that, but that's happening the week before finals week, which is May 3rd through May 7th. And that's just some events that you could attend to decompress and relax while you're preparing to finish out the semester strong. You can find more information about these events and others in our resources and events module. This is an image of that module, and our STEM peer mentors have been working real hard to keep that updated. So definitely check that out. You could definitely probably find something that you're interested in or some resources that you could leverage. And you could also look at the newsletter that you get every Tuesday for more opportunities. And that is all that I have. Thank y'all for attending today's session. Me, Deanna, and Alex will be hanging back if you have any questions, but have a good rest of your evening and stay warm if it's snowing where you're at.
Thank you. It started snowing already, just because you said that.
That's good. It's been snowing in Greeley
It's
for
snowing
a few
so much
hours.
now.
Yes, you need the snow.
Like
It
literally
is.
through the whole meeting, I was looking and I was like, oh my god.